The parasha of this morning is known as Parasha Lech Lecha, and I subtitle it The Real Lech Lecha. The parasha of this morning is known as Parasha Lech Lecha, and I subtitle it The Real Lech Lecha. This parasha is actually part of it written by Rabbi Pinchas Weinstein. And God said to Abram, "Go forth from your land and from your birthplace and from your father's house to the land that I will show you." Bereshit chapter 12 verse 1. And God said to Abram, "Go forth from your land and from your birthplace and from your father's house to the land that I will show you." A big deal becomes less so each time you do it. You know, familiarity breeds contempt. I guess even making $1 million is no big deal if you've done it hundreds of times already. Just throw it in, and and it continues. I said, familiarity breeds contempt. When you have been doing something over and over and over again, it becomes less difficult because you master all the scheme on how to do such a particular thing. For the first time, yes, it might be very, very hard. For the first time, yes, you need to calculate on how to do this and that, but once you've been doing that thing every time, you get familiar with it. You know how it starts and you know how it ends. For the 3,332nd time since the giving of the Torah, at last, Abram has Lech Lecha. He packed up his family thousands of times before and moved them from Mesopotamia to Canaan. And now we are watching him do it all over again because we have an obligation to read each word of the Torah each year. Exactly. What am I trying to say? Because we know that each year we are going to do what? We are going to recite the Torah from Bereshit to Devarim. Every year we do that again, we do that. So we get used to those words. We get used to the pattern, the circle of the Torah. But what is about there? That sometimes people get used to something, they lose the meaning. Sometimes you get used to a particular thing that you think like this, you can just do it, even though with your eyes closed, you can do it. But let's see some mistakes that some people, or some of us that were called Jews, some of us, what mistake are we doing because we get so familiarized with things? My question now is, what is the real Lech Lecha? The question I'm asking you is, what is the real Lech Lecha? One way to do that is take the event apart and identify the components that makes it special. What are those components of Lech Lecha? What are those components of Lech Lecha? So we're going to see what makes the Lech Lecha of Abraham special and what makes it a real Lech Lecha. We don't have to look too far because Rashi immediately points out which risk Abraham took in following God. And God said to Abraham, "Go forth from your land and from your birthplace and from your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will aggrandize your name, and you shall be a blessing." I will make your name great, grandiose. I will make your name mighty. I will make you great and mighty, and you shall be a blessing. It is a risk, right? Some people think it is a risk in following God. It seems that it's a risk that, you know what, I am going to abandon everything that I have ever achieved in my life. I'm going to abandon all the knowledge I've attained at the university. I'm going to abandon, me as a doctor, and God is calling me to be a rabbi. How can I study 10 years? How can I study 9 years? How can I study 8 years or 7 years at the university to be a surgeon? 15 years as a surgeon. Then God is telling me to be a rabbi. Now, am I going to abandon all those years of my education, all the thousands of dollars that went, all the pains, all the suffering, all the night burning candle that I have burned to get my degree and my certificate, and now God is telling me to be a rabbi. Now, for me as a medical doctor, right? I have at least in a year I make $400,000-$500,000. That's the at least minimum, and I can make up to $1 million plus in a year. And now God is asking me to be a rabbi. How much does a rabbi receive? How much does a rabbi receive? All this, my home, my mansion, how am I going to do what? How am I going to pay for all my expenses? Because remember, I am used to a particular style of life as a medical doctor. And now God is asking me to be a rabbi. That means that my life will be 100%, 180 degree change. It's a complete change. So how am I going to live that my life of wealth as a medical doctor comparing to that of a rabbi? There's a great change. How am I going to be able to afford all this or to maintain them? Because it's a different kind of lifestyle. It might be a great risk, but I'm telling you, it is not a risk at all. In the eyes of the world, it's a risk. In the eyes of the world, it is stupidity. In the eyes of the world, they will tell you, oh, this man has gone mad. This man is actually need a psychiatrist. This man actually need somebody who can talk to his brain because he's gone nuts. That is what they always say. That is what they told Noah, our forefathers. And that is what they told Abraham too. You amass all this wealth, you amass all this is your father, your friends, your family, your work, your everything that you have amassed, everything, and you are leaving them, abandoning everything, and you're going to a place that you don't even know. Then it seems as if you are sick in the brain. But to the eyes of the people, to the eyes of the world, to the eyes of those who doesn't understand, it is a risk. But to the eyes of the spiritual man, it is a blessing. He says, I repeat again, and I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you, and I will aggrandize your name, and you shall be a blessing. And I will make you into a great nation. Since traveling causes three things. Rashi is explaining. Since traveling causes three things. What are these things? Number one, it diminishes procreation. Number two, it diminishes money. And three, it diminishes fame. Number one, it diminishes procreation. And number two, it diminishes financial wealth. And number three, it diminishes fame. How? How does it diminish procreation? How does it diminish financial prosperity? How does it diminish fame? We have to understand that traveling from one place to another constantly, the man is always packing up, offloading, unloading every time. So the physical strength of the man is constantly working, and so thereby, even though your wife is always stressed up, you are stressed up, your wife is stressed up, and so therefore procreation is, let's forget about it for the meantime. And understanding that procreation is the number one mitzvah that God has given us. How does it diminish money? We all understand that traveling costs a lot of money. It costs money for you to travel from one place to another. It is not free of charge. Even though back then you have to feed your animals, you have to buy food for them, you have to buy things for your servants, for all the souls that you've got. There's a lot of There's a lot of financial resources that goes into traveling. There's a lot of logistics that go in planning your traveling. It's not just packing your load and moving to an unknown place. And number 3, it talks about fame. How does it diminishes fame? Because remember that you've established yourself in a particular place. You are, for example, a dentist that is well known in a particular place. Everybody comes to you for their, for the repair, of their teeth and operation and so on and so forth. And now God is telling you to pack your load to another place that nobody will know you. So, in a place you've established yourself, everybody knows your practice. They know that you're a professional in what you do. But going to another land, to another place where nobody even know you at all, for you to re-establish your fame is hard. For you to come, that is, you are starting from point 0 again. So it is very, very hard. He therefore required these 3 blessings from God. That is, Abraham required these 3 blessings from God. Namely, that he blessed him concerning his children, concerning money, and concerning fame. Explain Rashi. We can understand why procreation would be a concern of Abraham. First of all, it is an important mitzvah, as I said. And secondly, it is the most important. It is important for him to allow what he has begun to continue his past own life. No one will be better than his own children to further his spiritual legacy. Because if you don't have children, who is going to continue your legacy? If you don't have children, who is going to continue your way of life? Remember that God told Abraham that I know Abraham, I love Abraham, because Abraham will do what? Will teach his children to do what? To follow the Torah after him. To follow me. It is a continuous job. The Torah or the message of God does not end with me. It actually is the beginning. It starts upon my children, and my children will teach their children, and their children will teach their children. It never ends until the last day, the day of judgment. So the Torah continues. And that is why Abraham is so concerned about children. He wants children. Because if he doesn't want children, he said, is this Eliezer that is going to do what? It's not that it's decreasing Eliezer. No. Is this Eliezer that is going to do what? That is going to inherit everything that I have. Your own is your own. Your blood is your blood. Your DNA is your DNA. It's different from another DNA. That is the point Abraham is trying to say, that my own children can continue my spiritual legacy in the world that God has given me in this particular world. Even though far after I have gone, my children will continue my spiritual legacy. But money and fame, really? Let's see. Judaism can be a funny thing sometimes. Sometimes one mitzvah can force a person to do something in a way that seems contrary to another mitzvah. A mitzvah can cause a person to do a thing in a way that is contrary to another mitzvah. For example, just wanting to be rich for the sake of being rich is not an Israeli value. I repeat again. Wanting to be rich for the sake of being rich is not an Israeli value. Yet it is the people with money who give the most tzedakah. It is important to have children, but too many can be a downfall of a family. The Torah says you give what you have. Is that not? You cannot give what you don't have. If you don't have money and you want to give a tzedakah, how can you give a tzedakah if you don't have money? If you don't have gold, how can you help people? How can you allow people? How can you tell people, listen, the word of God? If you don't have money, how can you rent this place if you don't have it? If you don't have money, is a liquid that makes the word of God to roll, to start. God himself understands that. God is very important. It's a liquid that makes the machines to roll. So without financial prosperity, it is very, very hard. You can be singing and singing and singing, but who is listening is going here and is coming out here because there is no financial prosperity to back it up. So therefore, when you have money, you can give. If you don't have it, you cannot go and steal in the bank to give it. So God understands that, and that is why God is blessing us, because He understands that we need money to further His work. He also said that too much children can be a downfall of a family. Of course, you have to plan your children. How many children do you want? If God give as many as God give you, but God understands your what? Your strength. How many can you carry? The Holy One, blessed be He, can never give us a load that we cannot carry. If God give you 10 children, that means that you can carry 10. If God give you 5, that means that you can carry 5. If God give you 7, that means that you can carry 7. So whatsoever you can carry, that is what God gives to you. So don't be like a wanton eyes that wants 2 million children and you cannot even take care of them. Because if you don't take care of your children, they become what? They become vagabonds. They become criminals and they become thieves. And is that to the glory of God? No, that is not to the glory of God. So you should be able to do what? To have the one that you can do what? You can train. Likewise, it is important to strive for spiritual perfection. But doing so can make people overly critical of others. Fame is not for Torah's Jews, yet it is the most famous ones who often are responsible for the biggest sanctification of God's name. If there are a lot of extremists in Judaism, it is because Judaism can and will promote extremism. I repeat, if there is a lot of extremists in Judaism, it is because Judaism can and will promote extremism. It says that striving for spiritual perfection, striving to become stronger and bigger and mightier in the spirit realm is very good. But when you go too much in the extreme way, then that is not good. Then you start looking down at others. Then you start saying, oh, me, I'm not like them. Thank God I'm this strong, I'm so powerful, I'm this powerful rabbis that no any other rabbi can match me. You start beginning to do what? To look down on others, to look down on people, and thereby they were being critical of others. Say, oh, he did this, oh, he's not a rabbi, oh, he did that, he's not a son of God, oh, he did that, because you think that you are standing so strong. It also says that for the Jews that study the Torah, that's what I call the Torah Jews. Those Jews that follow the Torah, there can be a lot of extremists among us. And if you can see that most famous ones of those Jews, you can see them in the Torah. It looks as if they are extremely. It looks as if they are very, 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 very hard. It's like it looks as if they are extremists, but it is not, because they are zealous after God's name. If you look at Pinhas that go and kill his brothers, because they are all one family. We are brothers. If you look at other men of God in the Torah, it seems to be the Levites that slaughtered their brother after they started worshiping the golden calf. You look extremists in the world of this present time. I'm saying, in the world of the present time, say, oh, why did he go and kill his brother? Why are they slaughtering themselves? Why are they killing themselves? This is extremism. It is because Judaism can and sometimes promote extremism in the form of sanctifying the name of the Holy One, blessed be He. But what I want to say is, striking a balance is the work of a wise man, a skillful man, a Torah scholar. A Hachem is what they call it in Hebrew. Hachem. Someone who is a Torah scholar. Striking a balance between this is the work of the Torah. It's the work of each and every one of us. God doesn't want us to be this or this. God doesn't want us to be an extremist. But God wants us to strike the balance in His word, in His action, in His doing. Whatever we do, in whatever our action is, there must be always that balance. Because without balance, then it becomes imbalance or disbalance. Then it becomes a problem. Everything that we do, any act that we act, there must be a balance in it. Likewise, to make choices as few times as possible, and then let life take care of itself. But it doesn't. No two situations are ever exactly the same. As similar as they may seem, even the smallest difference can promote a variety of outcomes, and failure may occur where something previously succeeded. So, us being used to a particular thing, I've done this thousands of times, I've done this millions of times, I know how it works out. But it says that a particular situation, no matter how seems they may be with the former one that you did, there is always this nuance, these different slight differences, and these different slight nuances may do what? May bring another outcome. So don't relax and say, I know everything, I can do everything because I've done it 10,000 times before. Because a little change can bring a disastrous result. It was Shlomo HaMelech who advised in Kohelet when he said that everything has its time and place. Confusion and sometimes destruction occur when we misuse time. For example, declaring war when peace is necessary, or peace when war is the real answer for a particular situation. You have to truly be a wise man to know the differences. As a leader, as a king, as a president, as a prime minister, you have to be very, very wise. You have to have wise men, wise people that advises you, that give you the truth advice, that give you a spiritual insight into a situation. For example, a country is facing war. And for example, a country is facing a war, right? And somebody is saying, you know what? No. You don't have to fight because it is not time to fight. And another person is telling you, no, do this and do that, when it is time for you to do what is right. So therefore, Abraham was such a wise man. Yes, he wanted money, lot of it, but not for any personal use. He wanted money so he could be the perfect spiritual host to anyone who crossed his path. He personally ran an inn so that he could feed people spiritually while feeding them physically. He wanted to be wealthy for the mitzvah of giving. Abraham was such a wise man. Abraham wants a lot of money, but not for his own personal use. If I ask each and every one of us here, how many of us want to be a millionaire? Everybody will raise their hand, right? Hey, me. Good. But what is your intent? Do you want to consume it on yourself or only to benefit yourself? You live in a mansion and your brothers is living in dungeon. Remember, we are brothers. Oh, you know what? I am Sephardic Jews. Oh, I am Ashkenazi. Oh, I am this and that. You create division between yourself when you are brothers. When you are the son of a single man. You have money. You consume it on your own self, and your brothers are suffering. Joseph never did that. He said, for this reason, don't be ashamed. Don't worry yourself. Don't even have a second thought. For this reason, the Lord has brought me down here to prepare a way for you. Joseph was not like that. He took care of his brothers. So likewise, Abraham actually had an inn in which he entertained people. He fed them physically in order for him to feed them spiritually. Likewise, fame played an important role in his plan. Nothing advertised his Kirov operation more than a good reputation. People had to know about him to find him, and they had to find him before he could find them for themselves. Fame was crucial for his plan to reform the world in the direction of God. And he might have been concerned that he would lose it because he's hitting the road. When you've built an empire, when you've built a synagogue, when you've built a home in a particular place, and the Holy One, blessed be He, is telling you now you have to pack your load and leave and go and establish yourself in another place. You are starting from zero again. So he needs this fame that people will come unto him, and they will see the light of the Holy One, blessed be He, that is in his life. This light will shine because I said this light will shine because you are very close to the Holy One, blessed be He. Therefore, it is perhaps one of the most important messages of Lake Lehi that it is largely overlooked. It wasn't just about following God to a foreign land. It was about following God to the completion of a specific goal. And what is that specific goal? The specific goal is that God gives him the son. And God gave him not only a son, He gave him a real estate, a land. Because if you have the son, you don't have a real estate, you are wasting your time. And in that real estate, the Shekinah will rest upon it. Some of the greatest successes in life have occurred in ways that went against the norm. Go without God and you have to be, and that will have to be a problematic. Maybe you will succeed, maybe not. Maybe you will pass, maybe not. But go with God, and the law of physics have less to say about your success. When you go with God, the law of nature does not work. When you go with Him, the law of nature does not work. Because when the law of nature wants to work contrary against you, the Holy One, blessed be He, will say, no. He changed it. The law of physics does not apply to you because you are working with the creator of physics. Lake Lehi applied to anyone who is willing to go with God, in spite of the appearance losses of doing so. Betahon, trust in God, says you can go wrong with God. You can't go wrong with God no matter how much statistics say you will. I repeat again. Betahon, trust in God, says you can't go wrong with God no matter how much statistics say you will. You can never go wrong. No matter how the whole statistic, the odds is all against you, you can't go wrong because God, the Creator, is with you. Because the truth is that Abraham knew exactly where he was going. God has already taken him there before, and he knew the land was destined to be his. He didn't follow God blindly to a physical location, as many people think. No, he didn't follow God blindly to a physical location, but he followed Him blindly to a spiritual one. And that was the greatest of Lake Lehi. Abraham, our forefathers, followed the Holy One, blessed He, to a spiritual location blindly. Because understanding that Abraham has been in that place many times before. So he knows the in and out of the land. Yes, the land might be tough. Immediately he arrived, there was famine. It's a lot of things. There are a lot of physical preparations. Of course, Many of us, most of us here are immigrants here. We know how tough it is. But with the Holy One being with us, we shall not fear, because He is going to prepare all your need according to His riches in glory. Whatsoever you need to sustain you in the land, He will provide it. Fear not, because He is with us. In this week reading, Abraham is called an Ivri, a Hebrew, for the first time. And it was told to Abraham, the Hebrew. Genesis, Bereshit chapter 14, verse 13. What is the meaning of the word Ivri? One of the most common descriptors of Israel. And Ivri simply is the one on the other side. The one on the other side of the Jordan River. That's what it means. Just people living on the other side of the Jordan. It is a common translation of Hayadim. It's a simple interpretation of the description is that Abraham was a foreigner. It shows that this man is a foreigner. He's not part of us. He's not of the land. He's a foreigner in the land of Canaan, in the land of Canaan. He was a native of Aram, a region on the other side of Euphrates River. The Midrash, however, says this word reflects a far deeper distinction, going to the essence of Abraham's personal outlook and belief. I repeat again. The Midrash, however, say this word reflects a very deep distinction, going to the essence of Abraham's personal outlook and belief. The entire world was on the other side, explained the Midrash, and Abraham, our forefather, was on the other side. The whole world was worshipping idol on this side, but Abraham alone was on the other side. Him and the souls that he has gotten. Because remember that Abraham was an evangelist too. He evangelized, talking about the monotheism of God, that God is one. Not all these idols that you guys are worshipping. Not all this work of your hand, this God that you describe and you make a mountain image and you worship it. You are wasting your time. That is not the real God. Abraham was on his own. He was concentrating on his own, while the whole world were busy hustling here and there on their own. The many story of Abraham clashes with the dominant pagan culture bear this out, from being thrown into a furnace by Nimrod, as described in the Midrash, to destroying the idol of his father, Terah. In our time, the name Ivri, which means Hebrew, has proven its same power. It is almost as familiar to people as the time Judaism and being Jewish. Many of the values and beliefs Abraham introduced to the world, monotheism, the primacy of kindness and sacrifice for others, empathy for the suffering and spiritual health of others, have become the dominant belief in our days. In this way, a Hebrew has shown the world the beauty of the value of Abraham, and they've joined him on the other side. You can see different kinds of belief that seems to say, we believe in one God. Where does it start from? From our father Abraham. He said, this is it. I heard the voice and understand, and I know that he is calling. The idol has mouth, they cannot speak. They have ears, they cannot hear. They have eyes, they cannot see. But this one, no. Tells me everything that I have to know. And I believe. It is a trust, it's a belief. It's understanding. It's a deep spiritual understanding. Once you understand and once you know, and when you follow him by faith, I'm not talking about blind faith, because Abraham knew where he was going. Follow him by faith, and the end will be blessing. Rabbi Whitson said, when he once asked a Hador about returning to the land of Israel, he was told to do so. But also he asked him if he have a job lined up. When he asked why asking him if I have a job lined up, I'm going for the Aliyah, to the land. But he said, finally, are you going to say, yeah. But do you have a job lined up? Or I don't know, or I don't have. What does that make a difference in the word of Bitahon and Ebuna? He asked. He asked himself. He answered that it is not good publicity for the land of Israel when people reverse their aliyah because they can't make a good of it in the land of God. Because many people, I said, have gone to the land only to their own detriment, only to their own bitterness. Because they go to the land, say, okay, I want to go to the land, it's good, it is fantastic, it is a commandment, we have to make aliyah, we have to go. But many people go on their own, not according to the plan and according to the commandment of the Holy One, blessed be He. Then when you get to the land and there's all kinds of tribulation and trials, then you begin to think, oh, you know what? I made a mistake. I better go back to US, or I better come back to Canada, because in Canada there's all kinds of job, or there's all kinds of things. When you can't make ends meet in the land, they start facing all kinds of start thinking, what can I do? I mean, I made a mistake or not? But you don't know temptations or other things that might come your way. But you have to be patient. You have to face it. Abraham was patient. He faced it. God asked him to go down to Mizraim. He went down to Egypt to live a little bit there. And from there he came up again with enormous wealth. But Abraham Avenu also suffered hardship when he got to the land of Israel, and even went down to Egypt because of famine. And God personally brought him here, not the Jewish agency, not agency of Aliyah, but the agency of the Almighty. What kind of message did that send to potential future maker of Aliyah? At first, not a great one, because you might think, oh, I'm not going there because there's all kinds of suffering. There's no rain, here, there is snow, there is rain, there is water, I can use water, whatever I want, like in Canada, as the statistics said, that Canada is the number one country who specialize in wasting waters, because we can waste water a lot. But in that place, you can't take your bath 2 hours because there's no water much. You have to manage everything. Everything is by measure. Sending Abraham south, at first glance, but when Abraham returned intact and wealthy from Egypt, it becomes clear to everyone. Sending Abraham south to Egypt for fame and wealth was part of God's fulfillment of his promise. Part of Abraham's mission, not interference. As Rashi points out in the parasha, everything Abraham did was for the sake of his future descendants, who too will go down to Egypt and emerge wealthy for life in the land of Israel. The bottom line is that Abraham was a man with a mission, with God's mission, and Lake Lehi was a test to see what extent he shared that mission with God. It was then, and that remains so for every Jew ever since. Every Jew has to take their own Lake Lehi. Each and every one of us, we have to decide, are we going to follow God, or are we going to do what remain in this life of sin? Are we going to follow him spiritually to the land that is going to show us to the world to come? Or are we going to follow the wide road that thousands and millions of people follow? Are we going to say, you know what, we are in the 21st century, where a 3-year-old can tell their papa or their mama, a boy, say, Papa, I'm a girl, and the papa will say, yay, you are a girl, go, let's have transgender. Or are you going to say, because it is not politically correct to mention the name of the Holy One. And you know what? Okay, I'm not going to say anything because I'm ashamed. Because if I evangelize, if I talk about the name if I give the message of salvation to people, then they are going to tell me I'm some kinds of stupid person that is old fashioned. We have to understand what path are we going to follow. The path of the Holy One or the path of the world. But remember, your forefathers, Abraham, Abino, was on the other side. He stood on his own, firm. He does not allow the influence of the world to influence him. His nephew Lot thought he can do that. It was very difficult for him. Abraham was on his own. He left his father's land because staying in that place will corrupt him. They either change you or you change them. If you can change them, you move. Because remaining there, they will surely affect you. Remaining there will surely affect your personality, your spiritual being, and your physical being as well. So you decide, I want to remain or I want to move to the other side. Abraham decided to move to the other side. And he saw the blessing of the Holy One. So the parasha of today, Lekhleha is telling us, are we staying here or are we moving to the other side, spiritually and physically? Are we going to continue to do what? To act as an ambassador of our forefathers in the land, in Canada, where God has put us temporarily? Are we going to continue to do what? To win souls according to the Torah? And Abraham left what? Haran with all the souls that he has gotten. 400 men. Are we going to continue to win souls for the kingdom of the Holy One? Blessed be He. Or are we going to continue to relax and say and fold our hand and say, just like Noah, I don't see? We have to see. We have to be patient. It might be tough sometimes, but the Holy One, blessed be He, knows what we want. He knows what we can and what we cannot. And He knows what is our need, and He's going to provide them all according to His riches in glory. So we have, as His children, we have to remind ourselves with this word of encouragement, which our forefathers have passed through. We have seen this path, and that is the path that our fathers went through. Jacob went through it. Joseph went through that. We all moved out of the land of Mizraim. So it is very important for us to understand this principle and to live our life according to the principle of the Torah. Without the Torah, you can't go to the world to come. Torah is a ticket to the world to come. It is the way that the Holy One has shown us. When we click ourselves with the Torah, when we click ourselves with the word of the Holy One, then we have hope. For that is our hope. Shabbat Shalom.